Hey guys, how you doing? Today we're picking up exactly where we left off in the Nazis and the Supernatural in Chapter 6 with Hansen, Hitler's clairvoyant. Um, yeah, no. Before we hop in, I should probably just say I'm hitting a lot of uhs. No, like and subscribe. It's very important that you do so you can get the next parts on this, of course. And if you haven't watched the previous parts already, you should probably go do that. How was that shameless plug? Did that feel shameless enough? Did that feel greasy? I think it felt pretty greasy. Yeah, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's hop right in to Hansen, Hitler's clairvoyant. One of the most influential occult practitioners throughout the 1920s and 1930s was an astrologer, fortune teller, clairvoyant, and vaudeville entertainer who went under the professional name of Erich John Hanussen, although his real name was Herschel Steinschneider. At various periods of his life, he worked as a stable boy, folk singer, trapeze artist, and lion tamer, as well as enjoying a brief spell as an opera singer. He had a sideline in blackmailing people to supplant his resources when times were hard. After completing his military service, he added hypnotism, telepathy, dowsing, and stage magic to his list of accomplishments. Hansen also belonged to an astrological group in Munich, and some of its members were in regular contact with Hitler. He wrote 2 books, one before the First World War, called The Road to Telepathy, Explanation and Practice, and after the war he published another book known as Thought Reading, a primer for telepathy. In addition to his writing, he was a master of creating atmosphere among the members of an audience, manipulating their expectations, and using physical and psychological deception to impress them. Through the astrological group, Hansen met Hitler and immediately attracted the Nazi leader's attention by telling him he could improve his skill as a public speaker. Instead of being offended, Hitler was interested and asked Hansen to train him. He showed Hitler how to use gesture and body language, as well as simply his voice, to create a greater impact upon the audience. The effects were undeniable, and soon Hansen not only joined the Nazi Party, but became a close confidant of Hitler. Hansen proceeded to exert himself to secure the victory of the Nazis. His own newspaper was edged with swastikas and full of astrological predictions of good fortune for the party and its leader. Hansen set up a palace of occultism where he gave public seances that were attended by many prominent Nazis. On the 26th of February, 1933, he made his most famous prediction. He announced that the Reichstag would be engulfed in flames, and the very next day, the building was on fire. The Reichstag fire still arouses controversy, and even today there is no agreement among historians over what really happened or who was responsible for the conflagration. The 3 main theories in the field are that the Nazis started the fire themselves, that the communists started the fire, or that it was the work of a lone arsonist. There is actually far more reason to suspect the communists of setting the blaze than is generally realized, and the Nazis were certainly capable of anything, but the overwhelming balance of probability, supported by the testimony of independent and anti-Nazi witnesses, is that the fire was the work of a single person. Marinus von der Lubbe was a serial arsonist who had already tried to burn down other buildings the same day. He was observed by anti-Nazi witnesses entering the building with incendiary material, and even the police believed that he had acted alone. Hansen's prediction was one of the main reasons why people jumped to the conclusion that the Nazis must have been responsible. More baffling is the question as to why Hansen ever had anything to do with the Nazi Party, let alone advising Hitler and working to secure his victory. He was Jewish, and could hardly have been unaware of the anti-Semitism that stood at the very heart of Nazi thinking. Whatever his reasons, they did him no good. 6 weeks after the Reichstag fire, he was kidnapped, murdered, and his body dumped in the woods near Berlin. He was not killed because of any secret knowledge about Nazi plans, although, of course, conspiracy theorists have put forward that suggestion. The truth is more prosaic and sordid. He had lent money to an SA leader who preferred to murder him rather than repay his debt. Even allowing for the extent to which Hunnissen and others helped develop the presentational side of Hitler's public performances, his dramatic success was far more than simply the result of technical virtuosity. Hitler had an instinctive ability to influence people not only through his public speaking, but even at close quarters and in private. Hitler and crowds. Hang on, how long is this section? Oh, actually, this isn't terribly long. I could probably finish this. The relationship between Hitler and a crowd was a complex and unusual one. Hitler undoubtedly considered himself a great orator, but his speeches appear to a later generation to be empty of content, delivered in a harsh and occasionally stammering voice, and on the face of it, unlikely to impress anyone who is not already a disciple. There is no doubt that millions of people, even in Germany, remained entirely immune to his powers of persuasion. On the other hand, neutrals and even opponents admitted that when they heard Hitler speak, it affected them profoundly and drew them, at least momentarily, into becoming part of his dark vision. Hitler possessed the ability to induce a state of ecstasy within a crowd. His effect was equally marked on men and women, old and young. William Shirer, author of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, described a Nazi rally in 1934. He was irresistibly reminded of the Holy Rollers, a religious sect whose members rolled around in ecstasy for hours, and he noted that the women in the audience gazed at Hitler in a state almost of sexual arousal. An anti-Nazi Englishman who spoke no German himself at a rally found himself at a rally where Hitler was speaking. To his amazement, he found himself shouting "Heil Hitler!" with the rest of the audience and giving the Nazi salute. Goebbels heard Hitler speak in Munich in June 1922 and was so captivated that he wrote to the Nazi leader declaring, "You expressed more than your own pain. You named the need of a whole generation, screaming in confused longing for men and tasks." The British Christian Ernestine Bowler described a Nuremberg rally she attended as follows. "I was sitting surrounded by thousands of SA men, and as Hitler spoke, I was most interested at the shouts and more often the muttered exclamations of the men around me, who were mainly workmen or lower middle class types. 'He speaks for me! He speaks for me! Ach Gott, he knows how I feel!' Many of these seemed lost to the world around them and were probably unaware of what they were saying." Even as a teenager, Hitler was fascinated by the power of words and the effect of mass meetings on people. Oh, goodness. You know that moment when, like, something just manifests in your nose? That's what it feels like. That's what just happened. Ugh. Yeah, where was I? Even as a teenager, Hitler was fascinated by the power of words and the effect of mass meetings on people. In Vienna, he watched spellbound as the Social Democrats used these tactics to win converts to their cause. He told his friend August Kubizek, after they had attended a performance of Wagner's opera Rienzi, that one day he would have the power to move crowds as Rienzi had done. Hitler consciously worked on overcoming opposition within crowds by what he called an appeal to hidden forces, Particularly in his early years as a party leader, opposition from communists, socialists, and conservative nationalists was extremely common. His method of dealing with crowds, particularly hostile ones, was described vividly by Otto Strasser. Hitler responds to the vibration of the human heart with the delicacy of a seismograph, or perhaps a radio receiving set, enabling him with a certainty with which no conscious gift could endow him, to act as a loudspeaker proclaiming the most secret desires, the least admissible instincts, the sufferings and personal revolts of a whole nation. Speaking as the Spirit moves him, he is transformed into one of the greatest speakers of the century. In essence, what took place at these public meetings was a curious interaction of emotional energy between the speaker and the audience. Hitler was able to enter into the unconscious minds of those hearing him and somehow appeal to their fears, their need for reassurance, their dreams and longings, and their desire for security and wholeness, and was somehow able to persuade them on an entirely non-rational level that he had the key to providing them with inner peace. In a very real sense, he activated the deep desire within millions of Germans for a Messiah to lead them to the promised land. And we will end off there. We will pick up next with Hitler and personal magnetism. I have to call it here because my break is soon going to be over. And, I would quite like to have a little chunk of that to finish eating my pasta. So, I'm going to call it here. You guys have a great rest of your day and or night whenever you're listening to this. And we will pick up with Hitler and magnetism in the next episode of The Nazis and the Supernatural by Michael Fitzgerald. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care and bye.